Listen to your own breath for a second. Now, imagine that same sound becoming your greatest enemy. At 360 feet below, every exhale is a countdown. 4 men entered a bubble of light. Only 2 would keep their future. This isn't about a mechanical failure. It's about the 33 hours where air became poison and cold became a physical weight. Sound changes first. That's the thing nobody warns you about before you go down. The ocean doesn't roar at 360 feet. It hums, low and constant, pressing against the hull like it's testing for weakness. Inside the acrylic sphere, every word comes out flat, swallowed by the water pressing in from every direction. There are 2 rooms down here, not one submersible. 2 separate worlds, sealed apart from each other by a few feet of aluminum and a hatch. In the front, behind a curved wall of acrylic thick enough to survive the crush of the deep, sit Archibald Menzies and Robert Meek. Menzies is piloting. Meek is here to look at fish, an ichthyologist, the kind of scientist who spends his life chasing creatures most people will never see alive. Through that clear dome, the ocean outside doesn't look like water anymore. It looks like glass that's been shattered and frozen mid-fall, black and endless, swallowing the searchlights before they travel more than a few yards. Behind them, separated by a bulkhead, sits the aft chamber. This one isn't clear. It's aluminum, solid, opaque, built more like a machine room than an observation deck. Edwin, Link, and Albert Stover are back there, surrounded by instruments and battery housings, feeling the hum of the life support system running behind the walls. 2 rooms, 2 different materials, 2 different ways of surviving the same ocean. Nobody says that out loud. Why would they? This is supposed to be routine. The Johnson Sea Link isn't some fragile prototype. It's one of the most advanced research submersibles of its time, engineered specifically to let scientists sit in comfort while the deep ocean tries to kill them through 6 inches of acrylic. That's the whole point of the design. Total visibility, total safety, a bubble of air and light dropped into a place that has never known either. And for a while, that promise holds. The light changes as they descend. First it dims to a deep blue, the kind of color that doesn't exist anywhere on land. Then it goes darker, then it's gone completely, and the only illumination left is what they're carrying with them, cutting cones of white through water that has never seen a sun. This is the part almost nobody talks about when they tell this story. The silence isn't peaceful, it's total. No birds, no wind, no hum of traffic in the distance. Just the recycled air moving through vents, and 4 men breathing it in, and out, and in again, in a space smaller than most living rooms. Menzies watches the depth gauge climb. 300 feet. 320. The wreck they've come to study is waiting for them near American Shoal, off Key West, sitting on the seafloor at roughly 60 fathoms down, 360 feet of black water stacked on top of a ship that used to carry sailors and now carries only rust and silence. It's the wreck of a destroyer, USS Fred T. There's something almost respectful about how the crew approaches it. This isn't treasure hunting. It's science, documenting how a warship decays, how life colonizes steel once the engines go quiet forever. Meek leans toward the viewport, watching shapes emerge from the dark. Fish drift past, unbothered by the human faces staring at them through acrylic built to survive pressures that would kill a diver in seconds. And here's the detail that should unsettle you more than it does at first. That front chamber, the clear one, the one that feels the most exposed, is actually the stronger space. The acrylic dome is built to hold its temperature, to keep its atmosphere stable, to give Menzies and Meek a fighting chance if something goes wrong. The rear chamber, the one that feels solid and armored and safe, isn't built the same way at all. It depends on something far more fragile to keep the air breathable. A scrubbing system. Chemistry, not just structure. Nobody explains that trade-off to the crew in this moment, because nobody needs to. This is a routine dive. People have done this before. The wreck has been surveyed before. There is no reason, sitting here in the humming dark, to think about which chamber is the safer one to be trapped in. That thought simply hasn't occurred to anyone yet. The searchlights sweep across broken steel, catching the edges of the hull, throwing long shadows across sand that hasn't been disturbed by human hands in years. Somewhere in that tangle of collapsed metal, wrapped around wreckage nobody has fully charted, a length of cable sits waiting. Rusted, slack, invisible in the dark. The current outside has been building the whole descent, quietly, the way currents do, without asking permission from the men who came down here to study fish and forgotten steel. Menzies adjusts the trim. The sub drifts just slightly closer to the wreck than planned. Nobody feels it yet. Not the pressure of the water, not the room's temperature, which will matter more than anyone realizes in the hours ahead. Not the cable, still hidden, still patient, still exactly where it's been for years. They're here to observe the graveyard below them. They don't know yet that the graveyard is about to reach back. The current makes its move first. It doesn't announce itself. There's no warning groan, no flicker on the instruments, nothing Menzies can point to and say, "There, that's the moment." 1 second, the submersible is holding its drift near the hull of the destroyer. The next, the water itself shoves sideways, and 11 tons of acrylic and aluminum go with it. Metal meets metal. The sound isn't loud so much as total, a shriek that seems to come from inside the hull itself, followed by a shudder that runs through both chambers at once. Meek grabs for a handhold. Stover, in the rear, feels the whole compartment lurch, and then stop, not slow down. Stop, like something reached out of the wreck and grabbed them by the tail. Because something did. Somewhere along the ruined length of the Fred T Berry, a single length of cable, old, corroded, tangled through wreckage that sat undisturbed since the ship was sunk as a target, has found the submersible's propeller assembly. It isn't just rope catching on rope. Investigators would later determine the fouling involved a spring-loaded hook fitting on the vessel, hardware built to catch and hold, not to slip free. This wasn't a snag that current or luck could undo. This was a trap with teeth. Stover works the thrusters. Nothing. He tries again. Reverse, forward, a hard turn to starboard. The engines whine, straining against a hull. 1,200 feet of dead ship refuses to release. The submersible doesn't move. Not an inch. Down here, at 360 feet, stuck doesn't mean inconvenienced. It means anchored. It means the 4 men who came to observe a graveyard have just become part of its architecture. Stover keys the radio. The words go up through 360 feet of black water to the surface support ship, and they are almost unbearably calm for what they mean. They are fouled. They cannot break free. Sit with that for a second, because up on the surface, in sunlight on a boat rocking gently with the swells, someone just heard 4 words that quietly rewrote everything. This was supposed to be routine. A dive, an observation, a return. Now it's something else, and nobody topside has a clean answer for what happens next. Here's the part that should stop you cold. The Johnson Sea-Link wasn't some fragile relic, it was one of the most advanced deep-diving vessels of its era, built to push past the reach of ordinary divers, engineered to survive exactly this kind of pressure. And it took 1 hook, 1 length of forgotten cable on a warship nobody had thought about in years. That's the trade this whole story turns on. Extraordinary engineering, undone by a single piece of rusted hardware nobody accounted for. Below deck, the crew doesn't yet have the luxury of despair. There's still troubleshooting to do. Still procedure. Menzies and Meek, up front in the clear dome, can see more of what's happening. The tangle of steel and cable pinning them in place, lit up ugly and stark in the searchlights. Stover and Link, in the rear, see nothing. They only feel it. The stillness where movement should be. But procedure only stretches so far before the truth underneath it starts to show. Free ascent is discussed. It's possible in theory to abandon the trapped vessel and rise on their own. Controlled, deliberate. Diverse have done it from similar depths before. The crew talks it through, and then they reject it, because a blind ascent from 360 feet, without support, without certainty, might trade a bad situation for a fatal one. Better, they decide, to wait, to trust that Navy divers are already being scrambled, that help is closer than it feels, that this will end in hours, surely not longer. It's a reasonable decision. It is also the decision that seals what happens next, because somewhere in that call, a second choice gets made, quieter than the first, and almost nobody in the chamber even registers it as a choice at all. To conserve what power remains, systems get shut down. Non-essential first, then more. And in the rear compartment, the one built on chemistry, not structure, the one nobody had reason to think about until now, the lights go out. The last thing Stover and Link see before the darkness swallows the chamber whole is each other's faces, lit for 1 final second by a dying instrument panel. Then nothing. Just the hum of trapped air and the sound of 2 men breathing in a blackness that has no bottom. And they are about to learn, very little air left to give. While Menzies and Meek in the front could see the abyss, Link and Stover in the back were living inside a metal coffin that had stopped pretending to be a machine and started feeling like a tomb. Cold has a way of arriving quietly. At first, it just feels like the air has gone still. Then it settles into the aluminum walls, and the aluminum starts pulling heat out of everything it touches, out of the instrument casings, out of the damp air, out of 2 men who have nowhere left to move. The forward sphere is acrylic, thick, curved, built to hold its own small climate against the ocean. The rear chamber isn't, it's metal, and metal this deep doesn't insulate anything. It surrenders to the water around it, degree by degree, until the inside of the compartment starts to feel exactly like the 360 feet of ocean pressing in on every side. Condensation begins to bead on the walls. Then it runs. Then it drips, slow, deliberate, landing on skin already gone cold, like something timed to make the waiting worse. Stover and Link don't have blankets. They don't have heat. What they have is each other, and they use it, pulling in close in the dark, sharing what little warmth two shivering bodies can generate against a chamber that's turning slowly into the temperature of the seafloor itself. There is no light. None. Not a glow, not a flicker, not the outline of a hand in front of a face. Only sound remains, breathing, and beneath it something worse starting to hum underneath their skin, because the air itself is turning against them. The scrubbers that are supposed to pull carbon dioxide out of the chamber were never built to run indefinitely, and in this cold, chemistry slows down. The same freeze creeping through the walls is choking the one system meant to keep them breathing. Every exhale adds a little more poison to a room that can no longer clean itself. It doesn't happen all at once. That's the cruelty of it. It happens the way a tide comes in, imperceptible, until suddenly the water's at your knees. The first sign is a headache, then the tightness behind the eyes, then breathing itself starts to feel like effort, like dragging air through something narrower than a throat should be. Their skin starts to prickle, their thoughts start to slip. This is what carbon dioxide poisoning does before it kills you. It doesn't take your breath cleanly, it doesn't grant you unconsciousness first, out of mercy. It burns. It sits in the chest like something lit. It scrambles the mind before it stops the lungs, so that panic and confusion arrive hand in hand, and there is no way sealed in that blackness to separate one from the other. Hours pass. There's no way to count them properly. No light to mark day from night. No clock they can see. Only the ping. Faint. Metallic. Coming from somewhere above them, filtered through 360 feet of black water until it barely sounds like anything human at all. It's sonar. It's rescue. It's proof that somebody up there knows exactly where they are. It should be comfort. Instead, it becomes its own kind of torture, because the ping keeps coming, steady, patient, and nothing else changes. On the surface, Edwin Link Sr., the man who designed this very vessel to be a sanctuary, could only watch the sonar pings. He wasn't just a mission commander anymore. He was a father listening to the slow, suffocating heartbeat of his own son, trapped in a machine that bore their family name. No vibration of a line attaching, no shift in the current that might mean a diver's hands are finally on the hull. Just that same sound over and over, marking time they can no longer track, proving help is close while offering no proof it will arrive in time. According to the government's own investigation into the accident, published in 1975, the rear chamber's carbon dioxide absorbent simply wasn't built to sustain two men for this long, and the freezing conditions in the aluminum compartment only made that capacity fail faster. The report is careful, procedural, written in the flat language of an inquiry. It does not describe what it felt like. It doesn't have to. The number does that on its own. More than 30 hours, trapped in a chamber never designed to hold breathable air for anywhere close to that long. Somewhere above the surface, engines are turning. Divers are being briefed. Equipment is being lowered through currents that keep shifting, keep stalling, keep adding minutes onto a countdown neither Link nor Stover can see. Down here, there is only the cold, the dark, and the sound of two men trying to slow their own breathing, trying to make it last, while their own exhaled air quietly becomes the thing that's killing them. As the air grew heavy, the line between life and the deep blurred. If you value these deep dives into the human cost of history, consider joining us here. But for Link and Stover, the only thing that mattered was the next breath. The lift line finally catches on solid steel, and for the first time in more than 30 hours, the Johnson Sea Link moves on its own terms. It doesn't happen fast. Nothing about this operation has been fast. Divers work the wreckage free strand by strand, fighting a current that keeps trying to push the submersible back against the hull of the destroyer that trapped it. Every foot gain feels borrowed, every foot could still be lost. But it holds. The cable pulls taut and the vessel begins to rise, slow, deliberate. Dragged upward through 360 feet of water, it never should have spent this long inside. Nobody on the surface is celebrating yet. Not with two compartments still sealed, still silent, still unaccounted for. The ascent takes time. Pressure has to be respected even now, even in an emergency, because rising too fast carries its own dangers, and after everything this crew has survived, nobody intends to lose them to a mistake made in the final minutes. So the crew above works the line carefully, watching gauges, watching each other, saying very little. Then, finally, sunlight. It hits the hull for the first time in a day and a half, and for a moment, it almost feels wrong. Too bright, too ordinary. Waves slap against the surface where hours earlier, only sonar pings had reached down into that darkness. Hands move fast now. Rescuers reach the forward chamber first, The acrylic sphere that has held its shape in its air for the entire ordeal. The hatch releases with a hiss of pressure equalizing, and inside, light hits two faces that have not seen it in over 30 hours. They're alive. Menzies and Meek are pulled free, disoriented, exhausted, blinking against daylight like men waking from something they're not sure was real. Their bodies are cold, their nerves are shot, but they are breathing on their own, speaking, moving. The chamber that held them, thinner walls, harsher exposure to open water, the one that felt like the fragile half of this vessel, turned out to be the one that kept its occupants alive. There's relief on the boat, brief, fragile, because there's still a second hatch. The rear chamber sits just a few feet away, aluminum, sealed, and utterly silent since the moment its systems failed. Rescuers move toward it, and the mood on deck shifts without anyone saying why. Nobody's shouting instructions anymore. The urgency changes into something quieter, heavier, more careful. The hatch opens. There's no rush of relief, no voices, no color returning to faces waiting for light, just stillness. Edwin Link and Albert Stover are found exactly where they endured those final hours. In the freezing dark, in air they had already turned toxic just by breathing it. Their expressions carry the strain of what the government's investigation would later describe in careful, clinical language. Prolonged exposure to carbon dioxide, a scrubbing system that could not keep pace. Cold that never let up. The same wreck that trapped this vessel also delayed the rescue divers who might have reached them in time. The twisted steel of the Fred T working against both the submersible and the men trying to save it. Two compartments, two very different outcomes. One built to withstand the crushing dark outside, and it did. The other, dependent on a system that simply ran out of time before help could close the distance. There's no ceremony to how this ends. No music swelling, no dramatic final line from anyone standing on that deck. Just two hatches, open minutes apart, revealing two realities that had existed side by side in the same vessel for over a day. One chamber gave its occupants back to the world. The other didn't. The Johnson Sea Link remains a haunting reminder that in the deep, survival can be decided by a single wall or a single breath. If you want to understand the thin line between life and the elements, watch how three others fought to survive the impossible abandoned in a Virginia hurricane, right here. The ocean never stops keeping records, and neither do we. I'll see you in the next investigation.